Hello everyone! So some might say that I have an addiction to art supplies, which I don't quite understand. I would just say I'm a collector. I love to surround myself by delicious art supplies, feeling the smell of paper and markers. Don't do that. And speaking of which, the biggest part of my collection is actually my markers. I started to collect ProMarkers when I was 17, and then I started to collect Copics when I was about 25-ish something, and I've always felt bad for abandoning my dearest ProMarkers, but should I really miss them? That is what I'm gonna find out about today. I'm gonna color the same drawing twice, one with Copics and one with ProMarkers, and we'll see which one is the best. But before we move on, I just want to mention this drawing that I'm gonna color. This is actually special made and designed to be turned into a sculpture, because this is a collab with my dear friend Jackie over at Nerdy Crafter. If you have not heard of her before, she's so awesome and talented and funny. Jackie makes a bunch of miniature clay and resin DIYs, craft challenges. She's also testing out different products and DIY kits. And if you would happen to find a product that she really doesn't like, she turns into Salty Crafter, which is my personal favorite. So be sure to check out her channel and her video where she will turn this cute little doggo into a sculpture. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm super excited to see what she will make. There is obvious differences between the markers. Copics comes with brush nibs while ProMarkers don't, besides the brush markers. Other things that separates them is that Copics are refillable and ProMarkers aren't. Copics are so much more expensive than ProMarkers though, but since Copics are refillable, it kind of evens out, because I remember I had to buy new ProMarkers all the time, which isn't very cheap in the long run. I tried to pick out fairly similar colors. They aren't perfect, but they are still quite close, I think. I first made a Copic version without even thinking about that maybe I should have matching ProMarker colors, so it was fortunate that I had kind of matching colors. And if you want lighter or mid-tones or darker color tones, ProMarkers are great, but they do lack the tones in between. Copics has a very generous range of color tones. They do have a lot more color options than ProMarkers, so you can get that exact tone that you're looking for. So I haven't used ProMarkers in a long time now, a couple of years or so, and as I said, I felt a little bad for not using them since I have so many of them, and they are the first markers I ever owned. It is kind of like first love, you know. The reason I started with ProMarkers is because Copics was very expensive for me, and they were so hard to find here in Sweden at that time, but you could find ProMarkers in almost any art supply store. So now, after using Copics for a couple of years, I was curious to try out ProMarkers again, just for fun and to see what I think about them now. The first thing I noticed that I didn't love with the ProMarkers, which is actually one of the reasons that I switched to Copics, is the bullet nib. I already knew I prefer brush nibs before bullet nibs, but after making the same drawing twice with different markers, the difference was so much more noticeable. The blending takes so much longer with bullet nibs. The edge between the colors is much more visible, and you have to go back and forth between the colors to get a smooth gradient. I don't say it is impossible, you just have to work a lot harder. With brush nibs you can get this feathery stroke that is tapered and lighter at the end, which gives a much smoother and easier transaction between the different colors, and you don't have to do as much work to blend. Like when I made a tail for the dog with the Copics, it was no trouble at all, because with a brush nib and the tapered stroke that you get, you can make really nice fur texture. With the ProMarkers it was a bit trickier and it didn't turn out as great, even if it kinda worked. Also, when you have a brush nib you don't really need a chisel nib, so they are kinda worthless on the Copics, but on the ProMarkers they are very important if you need to fill a large smudgy area and get even smooth colors. I know that some people don't really like the chisel nib, but I think they work really well to draw with though, besides that the chisel nib is a little hard to control sometimes. So let's talk a little about this drawing too. I really struggled at first to figure out what to draw. I needed to think about something that is fairly possible to translate into clay. With art you can pretty much do and draw anything, but when sculpting you have gravity to take into consideration. I know that Jackie is great with clay, so I didn't want to make it too easy, but I believe the mushroom will be a little challenging since it is so thin and top heavy. I also tried to balance the tail out with a rock on the opposite side. I really love how this turned out. It is so fun and relaxing to just draw cute fantasy creatures. And another thing I noticed with the ProMarkers that I remember I have thought about before is that the color seems to fade a little when they dry. Sure, the colors always look more vibrant when they're wet, but I remember I always had to go back over areas again to add more contrast and vibrancy. And I don't think I've had to do that with the Copics. I think you will see it better when I put the two pieces next to each other. Perhaps it is just the color choices, but it looks like the Copic piece is much more vibrant. So do I still love the ProMarkers? Despite all the things I have mentioned here in this video, they do have a special place in my heart since, as I said, they were my first markers that I've used for almost 10 years. I still know almost every color name. My favorites that I always had to buy new of were Cool Aqua, Orchid and Meadow Green. Love those pastel tones. I also always used up the Cool and Warm Grey #1, but other than that, nah, I'm afraid I have outgrown the ProMarkers. You can get similar results with both markers. I honestly do not see that much difference between the two pieces, but personally I find the drawing experience much more pleasant and easier with the Copics. The ProMarker ink though look more solid. The Copic ink makes the paper fiber show through in some way and make it look like specks in the colors. But even if the Copics wins in my book, I can still recommend the ProMarkers. They are nice markers that are fairly cheap and good to start with. As you can see, you can still achieve great results with them. So there you have them. Let me know which one's your favorite and what markers you use if you have any. It was super fun to do a side-to-side comparison. Let me know if there is any other markers that you would like to see me compare. Also, don't forget to head over to Nerdy Crafter to see when Jackie turns this into a sculpture. I bet it will be amazing and I'm so excited. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're new here and click on that little bell icon to get notified whenever I post new art and videos, and I will see you next time. Keep drawing my happy cats. Bye!